Public Works, Edinburgh Roadball Hearing Room. I'd like to welcome our Honorable Councilman Jack Weiss. And we have a rather lively agenda today. We'll try to get through it as quick as possible. But there's just a few housekeeping thoughts that I'm hoping you will keep with you. One is that you can tell that the closer you get to the microphone, the better we can hear you. So don't be afraid of the microphone. When you are up here, please give us your name and address. Sometimes we start thinking about what we want to say, and we actually forget to say our name and address. So we'd appreciate that very much for the record. As you're speaking, you have a 2-minute clock. When you look to your right, and many of you have written nice, eloquent letters, but you should get to the point of your letter. Otherwise, you're going through all the good stuff, and then you don't get to your punchline. So that's just something to keep in mind. Seeing that we have a very full agenda, it's okay to make a brief statement and just say, I agree with the previous speaker. You don't have to repeat everything. And if there's something new or different you do want to share, we do want to hear it.
Just give me your number.
So that being said, I want to welcome this afternoon Erica Teasley-Linick, who is a candidate for the West LA Area Planning Commission for the term ending June 30th, 2009. So please come up to the microphone and please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you. My name is Erica Teasley-Linick, and I'm a resident of Venice, California, and I am a Los Angeles native and have recently been appointed by the mayor to the West LA Area Planning Commission, and I'm here before you, interested in talking to you about my background and
Fantastic.
here to answer any questions you have.
Well, I want to first say thank you for your volunteer time. It is a commitment. It's many hours at times at these sessions during commission hearings. Can you just please share with us why you want to be on this commission and what you'd like to bring to the table as a commissioner?
Sure. As I mentioned before, I'm a native of Los Angeles, so I have a vested interest. My family is here. My sisters, my parents are still living in the place where I grew up in South LA in Baldwin Hills. And now that I'm back in Los Angeles after having been in other cities, I'm interested in the future of the city and in making sure that everyone has a place to live, everyone has a place to have some open space, and has an opportunity to actually enjoy the city as I've enjoyed it in my background. And presently now I have 2 young children, and so I'm interested in making sure that they have a good place to be and to spend time, and hopefully they'll stay in Los Angeles as well.
Well, thank you, Ms. Linick. I do appreciate your time and energy. Look forward to working with you, and I'd like to ask my colleague to have any comments.
Wish you good luck. I don't know if you know what you're getting yourself into.
Well, that's what everyone has been saying, but I live in Venice now, and Venice has lots of development issues and things that have been happening on Abbot Kinney and mixed use and live work, and there are affordable housing issues in the Oakwood area and things that I'm really interested in, and I want to make sure that my voice is heard in those areas as well.
You got a lot of free time?
I have some free time.
You're going to need it. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
I think by the end of this experience, you might be a land use attorney as well. But that being said, please submit your the ethics forms.
I have.
That'll be great. So then we will be seeing you in council in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you very much.
You have a great day. Okay, there are some items that I believe we can move forward with on the consent calendar. And there are some that I believe we can move, but we might have some cards for them. We do have cards on items number 2. We have cards on item number 1 card on item number 3. We have no cards on 4. So we'll call 2 and 3 special. No cards on 5. On 6, we do have several cards. On 7, we have cards. On 8, We'll also call special, given we have cards on 8 and 9. No cards on 10. Okay, so all right. Item 4, we can refer to the planning department. On 5, we could move, if we approve the building and safety recommendations to make minor changes to existing sections of the building code and request the city attorney to prepare the necessary amendments, we can refer this to the council. So that could be an action on that item. Six, 7, and 8 are special. 9 special. 10 we can approve. Seeing no cards. 11 we can move on consent. On 12 we won't have any reports. 13 are reports. And 14.
14 is a closed session item.
Closed session item, okay. So that can be the action of this committee. Councilmember, if you agree, can move those items, refer the rest of the department? Okay, so that'll be the action of this committee. So, Roberto, that brings us to, I believe, item number 2.
Yes, Councilman. It's a motion by Councilman Wise, seconded by Wesson and Reyes, directing planning to prepare an interim ordinance that would amend the expiration period for tract map applications.
Okay, can we have the planning department please come forward?
Good afternoon, Tom Rothman, the Planning Department. I'm here to report back on item number 2 today, which is a motion which was in response to a Senate Bill 1185 requesting that the Planning Department extend the life of subdivision entitlements for 12 months. So we've already begun drafting an ordinance that will do that.
Okay, any questions, Councilmember?
No, I like this one.
Oh, you like this one, of course. Thank you, sir. No questions. We do have 2 speakers, Heidi W. Mather, I believe, and Ann Nguyen. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Heidi Mather with JPI. My address is at 5796 Armada Drive in Carlsbad, California. We're an apartment developer. We have 2 projects under construction right now in the city of Los Angeles, and we've got 1 project where we're waiting for financing to be secured. I support the motion, but I would request that 2 amendments be considered to be added to the motion. One would be to amend the motion so that plan check applications and haul route approvals also get a 24-month extension. As you know, you apply for your plan checks after you get your entitlements, and so it would make sense to extend those as well, so that the plan checks don't expire before your map expires. And then the second request would be to amend the motion so that all of the associated entitlements, rather than a 24-month extension, they get extended so that they expire concurrent with the map. Right now, on the project that we're waiting to get financing secured, we've got 2-year entitlements and 3-year entitlements. The map is a 3-year entitlement. So if you give them all 24 months, then you still have some of the entitlements that expire before the map expires. I think it'd just be easier to just have them all roll with the map.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
If you have
Next
any
speaker?
questions, I'm here.
Thank you much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ann Nguyen with the Central City Association. The economy is on the brink of a recession. New home construction in California is declining. And with a deteriorating economy, applicants of projects with approved land use entitlements are experiencing difficulties in securing financing. Therefore, we are proud to support Councilmember Weiss's motion to extend the expiration periods for tract map applications. We also wanted to bring to your attention that the term associated entitlements in the motion is a bit vague and ambiguous. We urge the city to add variances, adjustments, site plan reviews, and CUPs to this list because maintaining these applications and entitlements are just as important and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. I just wanted to put on for the record that Mr. Michael Rosenberg is against proposal item number 10, and we'll just put that for the record, sir. So that's it. Thank you. Yes, thank you for submitting that letter. That takes care of item number 10. Okay, our next item, Roberto.
The next item, Councilman, is a motion Parks Perry. It's asking amendments to the temporary signage ordinance that was implemented last year. And there's several recommendations in the motion, and you can refer it to the department.
Okay, we do have some cards on this item. Since we'll be referring this to the department,
Yes, Council.
let's just hear from public comment, and we'll go from there. Mr. Stephen Afriat.
Good morning, council members. Stephen
afternoon.
Afriat. I represent CBS Outdoor. As I'm sure you recall, the history of this was that my client had some concerns about this ordinance as written at the time it was adopted, but the current ordinance had gone significantly through the process, and so we asked that the city and the department revisit making some changes to this ordinance down the line. I do want to state for the record that we strongly support a citywide graffiti abatement ordinance, but are concerned that the ordinance as proposed and written has not been working. Currently, only 25 to 30 permits have been issued to do the graffiti abatement. All of them have been issued to one company that is in the business of what is commonly known as wild posting. The restrictions of the ordinance with regard to height, separation of signs, and canvassing and other things having to do limit it to that style of signage, which also limits the amount of revenue that can come as a result of this. As a result, even though the ordinance requires that anywhere from 500 to 1,500 square feet of graffiti be abated for each permit, only 4,000 square feet of graffiti has been abated for all of these 25 to 30 permits. And we believe it's either because of improper enforcement or the fact that the ordinance as written does not drive enough incentives to be successful on the abatement side. So as a result there's an advertising benefit to one company and not a quantifiable benefit to the city. So we would ask, as you refer this to Public Works, that they look at expanding the types of signage that's being used to allow them to go up to 16 feet above the ground instead of 8 feet, to include a definition for sidewalk canopy, to allow up to 500 square feet of temporary advertising with a 5-foot gap, to reduce or have a formula of the abatement that is tied to the benefit of the signage, and to remove the requirement to patrol every 24 hours because it's not enforceable, as evidenced by our own statistics, is not being done and is cost prohibitive, and instead have another system of verification that the Public Works Department can look at. We also believe that there should be additional incentives to transfer the rights. Perhaps there might be a graffiti abatement signage right in an area where there's not a graffiti problem, and the council office can transfer that abatement to another part of the city. They could require donations to private groups. And incidentally, your nonprofits in Los Angeles have abated 7.7 million square feet of graffiti as well. And so maybe look at how we can partner with nonprofits to do a better job in doing graffiti abatement. I thank you for your consideration, council members.
Thank you, Mr. Afriat, for your work. So that'll be referred to the planning department.
Councilman, sorry to interrupt you. Can you also refer to Public Works in as much as it impacts the graffiti abatement program as well?
That we will do. Councilman?
Briefly, Mr. Chair, Ms. Burge at the end there. Hi, Ms. Burge. I guess my question for you, a couple questions for you, Ms. Burge, about this. You're familiar with the series of lawsuits that the city is embroiled in right now involving city sign ordinances, no doubt.
Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office, yes.
And it seems to me that there may be elements of these proposed amendments that that just sort of jump out, given some of these recent rulings. How does the city attorney's office analyze issues like that when ordinances are proposed? I mean, have you analyzed it yet? When would you do it ordinarily in the process?
Again, for the record, Jerry Burge. Well, Councilman, that is why we went down to the City Council and briefed the City Council in closed session on all these issues and asked for direction from the City Council. And I think as of now, we are litigating those cases. We are waiting for a final result. And so as of now, we are reviewing these ordinances, and we are taking them down to the council with any possible issues that we see. We have not reviewed this yet. We will obviously review it when it does come to us and raise anything. I will note that this is slightly different than the cases that we're involved with. Temporary construction walls, placement of signs is a different issue than the lawsuits that we are currently involved with.
I agree with that, and I don't know how a court would rule on these amendments at all, but...
I would say that none of the current lawsuits involve this particular issue.
I couldn't hear.
None of the current lawsuits involve this particular issue.
No, I understand that. But when you're talking about permitting large signs, or when you're talking about city receiving fees, those are the sorts of things that certainly Judge Collins's preliminary injunction, it's reminiscent of some of the things that caused concern. I guess maybe the thing to do would be to ask the city attorney's office if you could address any legal issues that are potentially raised by this, but do it a priori, do it first, so that if there are issues people don't invest and that cause you, if there are issues that cause you concern, there isn't a substantial investment of time by others who might not be aware of that. Is that okay?
That would be fine. If you'd like to continue this for a report back from the city attorney before you refer it to the planning staff, that would certainly be fine.
Well, I'll defer to the chair in terms of what makes sense procedurally, but having a look at it makes sense.
So if the city attorney were to look at the questions and issues raised by Councilman Wise, it would be more efficient for you to do that phase of it before the planning department digs in?
That's your discretion, Chair. Normally, you would refer this to staff, and we would work with staff and then come to you later. But if you would like us to come to you first, we're certainly willing to do that.
Why don't we refer it to staff, and as you go through that discussion, you can jointly come back with your responses. That way we can get to it quicker.
That's fine as well, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that takes care of that item. We'll now move into item number 6. And Madam Clerk, would like to close public hearings. So, I mean, in terms of accepting cards, otherwise we'll be here all night. So the public submittal for public cards has now closed. That we can just finalize, and we won't accept any more after this. We can put your name in for the record, and we can do that. Okay, Roberto, takes us next item.
Yes, Councilman. It's a report from the Planning Department. It has to do with the sober living homes issue that was initiated by a motion Smith-Reyes.
Okay, staff, come on up.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Alan Bell with the Planning Department. In response to a motion introduced by Councilmember Greg Smith, the Planning Department today presents its recommendations and findings concerning appropriate land use controls for sober living homes, and also reports on 3 ordinances regulating sober living homes recently adopted by other California cities. Our key findings are as follows. The state defines sober living homes as group living arrangements for persons recovering from alcoholism or drug addiction, where the home provides no care or supervision. Because no care or supervision is provided, sober living homes are not licensed or regulated by the state. As such, local governments can regulate them, so long as any regulations they adopt are fair, even-handed, and do not discriminate against a protected class, in this case, the disabled. Since persons recovering from alcoholism or drug addiction are considered disabled. As a practical matter, this means that any regulation the City of Los Angeles adopts in order to pass constitutional muster should be addressed at the general category of unlicensed group residential homes, which also includes, in addition to sober living homes, board and care homes, and also sororities and fraternities. A regulation targeted solely at sober living homes could be considered discriminatory and therefore constitutionally suspect. Another key issue to consider is the difference between a group residential home where the residents function as a family versus a home that operates as a business. If the residents constitute a single housekeeping unit, the city must treat them as any family occupying a dwelling unit. If the home is operated as a business, however, then the city may properly regulate them, but again, only so long as the city's regulations are not discriminatory. Of the 3 California cities that have enacted ordinances addressing these issues, only one, Newport Beach, can serve as a model for how Los Angeles should address unlicensed group residential homes. Newport Beach's ordinance is even-handed and not discriminatory because it does not target sober living homes per se, but instead regulates the broader category of group residential homes for the disabled, actually treating these uses more favorably than other unlicensed group homes, such as boarding homes. Murrieta and Riverside have both enacted regulations targeted at sober living homes, and so if challenged in court, these ordinances may not be upheld. In light of these findings, staff recommends that Plum direct the Planning Department to prepare a comprehensive citywide ordinance that regulates the broad category of unlicensed group residential homes. The ordinance should identify where these uses should be permitted by right, which zones, where these uses should require a conditional use or other discretionary approval, and also include criteria for distinguishing between a group home that functions as a family and a group home that functions as a business. Finally, the ordinance should include regulations consistent with the California Community Care Facilities Act, which allows us to regulate licensed homes with 7 or more residents. Licensed facilities with 6 or more residents are preempted from local regulation by state law. A citywide ordinance that regulates group residential uses, both unlicensed and licensed, is long overdue. The Planning Department's recommendation is a fair, even-handed solution to a complex problem, one that balances the need to protect the character of our residential neighborhoods, as well as protect the rights of persons with special housing needs. Are there any questions?
Yes, in this process, as you go through your analysis, at any stage do you or will you be able to assess the notion of saturation when you look at numbers of entities within X area? In some parts of the city, you find the concentration to be incredibly intense.
Right.
And so, will that be a factor in how we weigh out and start looking at this notion of understanding where these facilities are being placed or being allowed to be placed?
I think it's a very important issue. We would certainly address that in the work program. For licensed community care facilities, the state already imposes a 300-foot separation requirement. State law does not actually have a separation requirement for licensed drug and alcohol addiction facilities. For unlicensed facilities, we do have more discretion, again, so long as we don't engage in any kind of discriminatory activity. So, for example, the Murrieta ordinance, it does impose an oversaturation requirement for sober living homes, but it doesn't impose it on board and care homes. So we can address this issue, but again, the principle is we have to be even-handed in our regulations and not engage in anything that would be considered discriminatory against a protected class.
But there's a notion of balance, there's a notion of what is a healthy neighborhood.
And I think that we can absolutely address this in the study to address the feasibility of imposing some kind of a distance requirement consistent with state law and constitutional principles. We'd also have to take into consideration enforcement issues and whether or not building safety can properly enforce this. But that is something that would be addressed in the broader code study and something that we would certainly take a look at and report back to the Planning Commission if the PLUM authorizes us today to come back with a comprehensive ordinance.
Will one of your products include a map that indicates, not by name, but at least have a clear understanding of where the intensity of these facilities exist?
We did this 10 years ago when the Planning Department prepared a report on this issue for licensed facilities. We can certainly update that map for the licensed facilities. The addresses are readily available. For the unlicensed ones, that's going to be much more of a challenge because there is no central database that identifies them.
So perhaps you can just update what you do have.
We can certainly do that, and we will include that as part of the work program.
And if there are any other means of understanding where the unregulated ones are, if you can explore that, that would be helpful.
All right.
It'll give us a better picture of what's going on in the city. Thank you. Any questions from Councilman? Okay. Then thank you very much.
All right.
Stay close. We're going to have our public hearing comment period. And as I call your name, please give us your name and address. Keep your eye on the clock. We'll give you 2 minutes. So we have with us Jim Codington and Kathy Dow Don. Please come on up. Item number 6. That's Jim Codington and Kathy Dow Don. Then we'll have Sherry Talbert, and I believe it's Nichan Kulukian. Please, sir.
Hi, I'm Jim Coddington, 11444 Washington Boulevard, Suite C113, Los Angeles 90066. And I am the president of the Los Angeles County Sober Living Coalition, and we consider ourselves a Better Business Bureau of Sober Living Homes. Currently, we have about 325 sober living homes that we oversee. There's about 3,500 beds that we oversee on any given night in the county. And I believe that we offer valuable service to the community. I believe there's quite a few sober living homes that are not qualified to even be called a sober living home. On behalf of the Sober Living Coalition, we are willing to work with the Planning Committee, with the city, with all concerned parties on a solution to this matter, because I would hate to see many of our homes put out of business. Right now, it's not costing the city any money, and it's saving millions, if not billions of dollars for the recovery rates of individuals that need sober living homes. I also own and operate a sober living home. I've operated 2 homes in 2 different neighborhoods. I've never had problems in those 2 years. In fact, my neighbors love me right now. At some point down the road, I'm willing to have them sign documentation to state that. So there are a lot of quality sober living homes. I also want to acknowledge there is a need for some kind of regulation. And we, the coalition, are willing to work with the city and regulate the sober living homes to a point where we're not going to put, not so much the homes out of business, but we're going to lose a very valuable service to people who truly need this. That research has shown that 90 days, when somebody can be in treatment for 90 days, their likelihood of recovery increases dramatically. Most people can hardly afford a 30-day treatment program. Programs that do have treatment programs are actually mandating 90 days of treatment now. Sober living homes can continue that past the 90 days.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you very much.
Very well timed. Kathy Daldon.
Kathy Deladani. I'm representing the Tarzana Neighborhood Council. And last month, our neighborhood council voted to request that you put regulations on these homes. We feel that it's important that these people maintain services, but we have had problems in our neighborhood with the homes, and we feel that regulation, in order to keep a balance between, as Councilman says, a balance between the quality of life in the neighborhood and these homes, that regulation is very important. In fact, at my Land Use Committee meeting, there was an owners and managers of sober living homes, and they testified that even though they adhere to ethical standards and they are responsible in the way they conduct their homes, they feel that there are homes that are not that have problems and that they should be regulated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Sherry Talbert, and then Mr. Klukian. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Sherry Talbert. I'm a member of the Los Angeles Sober Living Committee, and I'm on the board, and I'm also a director of a sober living that's 3701 Cardiff Avenue in Los Angeles, 90034. We've been around for 34 years, and so far, to my knowledge, have not had any problem in our neighborhood, and have been able to offer, I don't know, thousands of women a chance to recover through our house. And through the Sober Living Coalition, my experience is anyone can, if they were to have a problem, they can attend our meetings, which are monthly, and address us directly. So there is can you hear me? So there is an open forum. Even though we haven't had problems, other people have found it pretty easy to reach us. So I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Please come up, sir. Then we'll have a Paul, I believe it's Dumont, and then John Saletos.
Good afternoon. My name is Nishan Kalukian. I represent North Hills West Neighborhood Council. The reason I'm here today is that we have had so much nuisance and the problems with the unlicensed and unregulated sober living facilities and similar establishments that almost a dozen neighborhood councils have asked us to form an alliance so that we can ask the committee to issue an ordinance which provides strict adherence to set rules of behavior with unannounced periodic inspections by the health department and with proper input from the neighborhoods. Local code and enforcement agencies must make sure that these and similar halfway homes are located very far away from schools, religious centers, shopping centers, etc. These centers must have maximum occupants per room with enough on-site parking spaces to avoid congesting our streets, enrollment in support programs, and the people who own or run these facilities must pass rigorous investigation and evaluation. We urge the City of Los Angeles to adopt an ordinance which would establish a bulletproof conditional use permit for all such facilities with strict accountability and transparency and with heavy fines and penalties for infractions or deviations by owners or sober living home occupants. I submit this for your immediate consideration and thank you for the opportunity to address this committee.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming down. Paul Dumont, and then John Saletos. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Dumont. I'm the head of household for Community Sober Living. We have sober living homes in the western San Fernando Valley. We have sober living homes in the San Fernando Valley. I understand the need for some oversight for sober living homes. There's a few bad homes in the Los Angeles area that are operated poorly with no oversight. And I'm a member of the Sober Living Coalition, and no one has contacted the Sober Living Coalition or any of the member homes, to my knowledge, regarding this motion or any ways to solve the problems. The very purpose of the coalition is to ensure health and safety standards are upheld and ethical standards are upheld, and to help if there's problems with neighbors or things of that nature. There's a lot of people that have received a lot of help because of sober living homes. Not everybody can afford an inpatient hospital stay, and when they get out of treatment programs, they really don't have anywhere to go. It's interesting that the city attorney's approach, it's somewhat novel in that they're looking for a way to skirt the Fair Housing Act, the federal law that protects people with disabilities. And I understand the need for regulation, and I think they were kind of put under the gun and scrambling to come up with an answer for the motion. Well, what they should have done is, and what I would recommend they do, is contact the Sober Living Coalition to work with us and our member homes to get the bad operators out of business. We're all being painted with the same broad brush. On that note, I contacted the manager of the City of Los Angeles Housing Department, and I have an email here from her apologizing that she couldn't attend the meeting and that she didn't know what the legislation was about. No one has contacted the city's own housing department to ask how this would impact housing in Los Angeles. Likewise, no one's contacted the City Department on Disability or the Commission to determine how it would affect people with disabilities. I would like to present these reports now.
Thank you. And just for your information, this process, now that we direct the planning department to begin to work on this, they will be communicating with the housing department and other relevant departments. And I'm hoping they will communicate with you now that they've heard from you, you're on the record, as they go through their work.
We want to help get the bad guys out of business so they don't paint us all with the same broad brush.
Thank you very
We're
much.
helping people.
Thank you. Okay. Chris Young.
John
Please.
Salidos. I live in the Granada Hills area. I'm with Granada Hills South Neighborhood Council.
Mr. Stolitos, of course.
John Salidos.
Okay, thank you.
I'm 17946 Index Street in Granada Hills. I'm with the Planning and Land Use for the Granada Hills South Neighborhood Council. As we reviewed the city planning document that's been presented, it's done very professionally. We'd like to thank the city planning for the effort and that they've put forth. It's nice and it's refreshing to read such a professional document. In reviewing it with our Granada Hills South Neighborhood Council Planning and Land Use, we also agree with the city planning recommendations. We agree that a citywide ordinance should be prepared and that it will be in the best interest of not only the occupants, but also of the community they support. Once again, I'd like to thank the city planning for preparing this. This is the second time we've been here, and this is an excellent job they've done. So thank them very much for that.
Thank you for joining us, sir. Chris Young?
Hello, my name is Chris Young, address 1336 Gordon Street, Los Angeles, California, 90028. I am speaking not necessarily against the ordinances, but against the recommendations to follow Newport Beach's ordinances. And looking at what they proposed, one of the things that Newport Beach does is propose a very high fine for a fee waiver, and a $2,200 fine annually would put a lot of these places out of business. A lot of these places are done by the community for the community and don't operate for profit. We operate to provide a service to our community that is not provided through the state or through local government. And these are necessary because, as you've heard other members say, that treatment facilities don't allow people to stay for 90 days. Sober living is a follow-up to that, so that people have the ability to really create a foundation for their sobriety and maintain a long-term sobriety, making them better citizens for the city as well as the state as well as the country. We need these services within our community. I have started and managed a house 4 years ago. We have never had any problems with our community. We've increased our community's well-being. Our neighbors are very appreciative of us. And really, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Dave Bouvet and Peggy Burgess. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the time. My name is Dave Bouvet. I live at 17515 Horace Street in Granada Hills, 91344. I've already submitted comments. I want to talk for my 2 minutes about what it's like to live 2 doors down from an unlicensed facility. And I live 2 doors down from an unlicensed facility. There's 10 to 12 men crammed into a home of about 2,000 square foot. And by the numbers, since the first of the year, we've had 20 paramedic calls to that address, 9 police calls, 2 incidents of public exposure, a death at the home, numerous incidents of littering, trespass, shopping carts left in front of the home, and last Wednesday, our most recent incident, a bomb scare, in which we were evacuated from our homes due to a ridiculous argument between 2 of the residents of this home, one of whom threw away a device that the neighbor found in her trash can, didn't know what it was, and called the police, who responded, didn't know what it was, and called the bomb squad. It was a bug zapper. So, myself, 5 of my neighbors, all of whom are over 80, 2 of whom are bedridden, were evacuated because of a stupid argument between 2 of these residents. We need controls on these unlicensed homes. This is the type of thing you get day in and day out when you live in the area of one of these unlicensed homes where there is no supervision, where there is no control on the number of people renting rooms. It becomes your own personal nightmare. And I hope the City Planning Department will take action to correct this by putting conditional uses that are reasonable and make sense for each neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bovee. Peggy Burgess. And then we'll have Yvonne, I think it's Dupree.
Good afternoon. Peggy Burgess, 8960 Aqueduct Avenue, North Hills. First, I thank City Planning for finally presenting the requested report. I asked the Plum Committee to instruct them to immediately prepare a comprehensive ordinance that regulates both licensed and unlicensed facilities, and to give them a very short time frame within which to do so. We just can't afford any further delay. I also request that the draft ordinance include the following provisions for both licensed and unlicensed homes housing 7 or more individuals. Excuse me. That no group residential home be allowed in close proximity to schools. The minimum distance should be 2,000 feet. Group residential homes should not be allowed in A, RA, RE, RS, or R1 zones. If they are, it must only be with a conditional use permit, and limits must be placed on the number of such homes allowed in a neighborhood. There must be reasonable minimum distances between them set. We suggest at least 1,000 feet, especially in the A and RA zones, where 350 feet may only be the distance between 2 or 3 properties. The ordinance regulations and requirements for conditional use permits must also apply to existing facilities. The Newport Beach fees are far too low. Fees should be non-refundable, and filing fees for CUPs should be at least $10,000, plus an additional fee of $2,200 per bed in each facility, payable every 2 months. There must be public hearings held on all permit requests.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Yvonne Dupree, and then we'll have Ken Shanlau.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Dupre. I reside at 16800 Devonshire Street, Suite 201. And I'm just here in total support. I'm not going to reiterate what everyone else has said, because obviously if I support the proposal, I am against sober house living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ken Shanlin, and then we'll have Adi Harmon.
Yeah, I'm Ken Shanlaw, 414 Lincoln Boulevard in Venice, California, 90291. I'm basically the director of the Sober Living Network. We oversee 6 county sober living coalitions that require all houses to be healthy, safe, ethical, and practice good neighbor policies. I'm here purely to participate in a solution to the problem, because the problem is not all sober living houses. The problem is the problem houses. And we certainly agree with the citizens here that no sober living house in any way ought to be disruptive to communities. Now, I have a lot of history. In 1997, when the state legislative council told the legislators that they cannot regulate or license sober living houses, the LA County's Commission on Alcoholism initiated a group to set up a trade association quality assurance plan. And that's been in effect now for many, many years. The key thing is that houses are needed. Houses are a valuable asset to most communities. If all the sober living houses would be closed tomorrow, you'd have a lot more people on the streets, and a lot more problems in communities. There's also the American Planning Association, which gives recognition to houses as being very effective, in no way affecting property values, and also have crime rates far less than the general population. The key thing here is that the planning department mentioned Riverside County. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll be with the Riverside County Sober Living Coalition. They have a relationship with the county. They have a relationship with the Riverside City Attorney. Riverside has a good ordinance. They only use that ordinance for problem houses. They have had no problem with coalition member houses.
Thank you, Mr. Shanley.
So you have to find out. I got 3 handouts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming to the council chamber. Audie Harmon?
Hi, my name is Audie Harmon. Address 5658 Tampa Avenue, Tarzana, California. Sober Souls, Sober Living. We invited Officer Scoggins, the senior lead officer from the West Valley LAPD, to come and tour our properties. He didn't even know we existed. Just like anything else in life, there's bad sober livings, or there's good sober livings, or there's bad plumbers, or there's good plumbers. And I think really that whatever history a house has based on police reports, that's what the city should take a look at, because there are a lot more positive houses that support people in recovery, that do random drug testing and so on and so forth, than there are bad houses. Yesterday I had the luxury of literally taking a person off the street, providing shelter to him after he tested clean and sober at zero expense to the county or the city. We had the opportunity to meet Councilman Weiss up at the Caltrans event, where we brought a bunch of people to participate with a Caltrans activity they had going on. There is a lot less crime in the city of Los Angeles when people stay sober. As everybody knows, drugs and alcohol, people rob, steal, cheat, so on and so forth to support their addiction. In their recovery, it's a process where the behavior is changed, and as a result of that change, people become assets to the environment. They're no longer a nuisance. But I think it's really important for the city to look at specific homes that they get complaints at and not judge everybody as a whole. And I don't know how many people here from the city council have actually, taken a tour of the average sober living home. But if it's a coalition home, like Mr. Shanlaw was saying, where there's code of ethics and there's insurance and there's random drug testing, and we follow the format of the coalition homes. If you were to go and visit those homes, a lot of you would be very impressed at the services that people are getting in the city for free.
Sir. Thank you so much. Diane Rosen? And then we'll have Beverly Crow. Diane Rosen, are you here? And then we'll have Beverly Crow. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Gentlemen, I'm Diane Rosen, Chair of the Planning and Land Use Committee of the Encino Neighborhood Council. On July 23rd, the Encino Neighborhood Council voted unanimously to support the motion regarding sober living homes made by Councilmember Greg Smith and Councilman Ed Reyes, requesting that the City Council adopt an ordinance requiring conditional use permits for sober living homes and related uses in single-family neighborhoods. For protection of single-family neighborhoods, it is vital that the Los Angeles Municipal Code require development standards, including but not limited to additional on-site and off-site parking, limits on the number of occupants, on the supervision and enrollment in support programs. These provisions should also establish accountability and transparency in the conditional use process, so as to ensure neighborhood input and the imposition of conditions to protect the community. We also want to identify 5 other problems. That no group residential home be allowed in close proximity to schools, daycare centers, religious centers, shopping centers, emergency facilities. We suggest 2,500 feet. And the important, that the maximum number of residents per home will be determined by the number of bathrooms. No more than 2 residents per 1 bath. Half baths do not count, as there is no tub or shower. That there needs to be proper qualifications for those who run each facility, and that even though one entity may have several locations, each location must be filed separately.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Beverly Crow.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Beverly Crow. I live at 147 South Citrus Avenue in Los Angeles, 90036. I'm an owner of Sober Living Homes, and we are members of the Los Angeles and San Fernando Valley Sober Living Coalitions, and we must comply with their guidelines. Our home is a safe haven for those who seek to recover in a supportive environment. Clean and Sober Living Homes, as the name implies, do not accept anyone who is active in their addictions. Someone who slips and drinks or uses must leave. We do not accept sex offenders. We operate on a slim profit margin, doing a labor of love for those addicts serious about finding a new life. We are doing a service to the community. We require our residents to either work, go to school, or be in an outpatient treatment. My friend has a neighbor who has a teenage son who drinks and smokes pot in the backyard in the summer almost every night till after midnight. He curses, and they curse, and they throw cigarettes in her yard. But this is not a sober living home. This is a private residence and a private family. And there's nothing she can do about it. We've never had any problems. Our home is next door to the former president of the Valley Glen Neighborhood Council. He loves what we're doing and is a big supporter. There's a lot of hysteria around sober living homes. Neighbors are scared, and they don't understand how this works. And they don't understand and know who lives there. They tend to exaggerate and lie. I know from experience. The only oversaturation in the community are the many who are active in their disease of addiction. Unfortunately, most of us know someone personally who is an addict, and many, many times, sadly, they are members of our own families. And we're just asking that the Sober Living Coalition guidelines supervise and regulate us ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker, Claude Eklar, I believe. Eklar, okay. And then Michael Roy.
Yes, my name's Claude Eicher, and I'm the sub-chairman for the San Fernando Valley Sober Coalition.
Welcome, sir.
I also own Recovery Zones 1 and 2, and also a sober living home known as the Comfort Zone in Winnetka. I've been doing this for 9 years now.
Can you speak into the microphone? Because it's hard to hear.
I'm sorry, yeah. Is that better?
That's
I've been
right.
doing this for 9 years now. I'm listening to what's happening up here and the two different sides of what's going on. I think everybody believes that there are bad sober living homes, and those sober living homes need to be eliminated or regulated some kind of way. But for the most part, the side that's against it, if they had their way, all the sober living homes at least in the valley would be closed. And according to Councilman Smith, he thinks there's about 1,000 of them in the valley. Now, if there's only 6 per unit in the valley, that means there's going to be 6,000 homeless people in the valley. And I don't think anybody wants that. I have extended the San Fernando Valley Sober Living Coalitions to Mr. Smith's office, asking him to work with us, to talk to us, anything, and had no answer whatsoever. Senator Runner sent his aide out. Wendy Gruhl has sent her aide out. Yoslavsky said he would send somebody to the council, to our council. And Mr. Smith doesn't seem to have any desire to work with us in any kind of way. Now, I'm hoping that will be different with the people who are actually passing the laws, because we have a side too. And you handcuff us, we're not a business, and so we're pretty much handcuffed about what we can do with the people that are in it. The people that are in the houses run the houses. And if the people in the houses don't run the houses, we can't throw them out because they have renters' rights.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
Thank you for coming.
So you need to understand our side. That's all I'm saying. So can you get in touch with us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Michael Roy, and then Manny Rodriguez.
Hi, Michael Roy, 1334 Westwood Boulevard, Los Angeles. I just have a very quick thing to say that according to the literature that I read, there already is a process for dealing with issues within sober living homes, and it's the nuisance abatement process. I personally don't know of one case, and I certainly don't know, I wouldn't have knowledge to them, but I don't know of any cases where that's been utilized. So it seems that there already is a process in place within the system that gives community members and neighbors an opportunity to voice their concerns and achieve resolution, but that's not being utilized. So it seems that there's something else that is now looking at being put in place when there already is a process that's not being used. So I'm just kind of curious as to why that is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Manny Rodriguez, and then we'll have Michael DeCostin.
Good afternoon, I'm Manny Rodriguez, and my address is 5720 Fountain Avenue. I own and operate a sober living in Hollywood, and one of the first things that I wanted to just make clear is that what we're dealing with is our addicts that are recovering both from alcohol and drug addiction and not criminals. And some of the tactics that I've heard this afternoon in terms of how we should treat these people and when we create this ordinance, I think is completely like off base in terms of the type of person that we're dealing with. What I wanted to also, the other thing I disagree with are the distances that people are proposing in terms of how far it should be from a school or a church or whatever. If that's the case, then we should also put a new ordinance on where liquor can be sold. As I said, I own and operate a sober living that I've been operating for about 3 years, and I have to say that it's been nothing but a positive experience. It's been an amazing experience also in just being able to see people recover and to know that myself and a lot of the other people that are a part of the Sober Living Coalition are contributing to helping these men and women build a bridge back to their lives. And that's really what we're doing. It's unfortunate that you're going to have situations like some of the ones that we heard earlier, but my experience has been, especially in my neighborhood, that it's been very positive, and I think that we've made a major contribution to our neighborhood in Hollywood. So thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, sir. Okay, Michael DeGostin.
Hi, Michael DeGostin, 13244 Compton Street, Sherman Oaks, California, 91401. And in about 2001, Attorney General Lockyer sent a memo to the mayors regarding the rate of disability, people with disabilities. In California, approximately 1 in 5 have disabilities. 1 in 10 have severe. Somebody mentioned about discrimination. Regrettably, those with disabilities do not have a lot of income. And so if you enact or support ordinances, that will cause the price of sober living to go up. Personally, I've been working in the treatment field for over 22 years. And during that time, in addition to my clinical duties, have overseen several different sober living houses in different parts of the city. I heard some nightmare stories. I assure you, if any complaints were brought to me, they were handled immediately. I'm also a member, or have been a member, of the Sober Living Coalition. And I assure you, the Sober Coalition is very dedicated to make sure it regulates the houses that it does, that do join it. In addition, a few years ago, the city was looking possibly at the Sober Living Coalition to provide that type of oversight, rather than involving the city to be part of that process, again, because of the cost. Increased cost, discrimination for those with disabilities. So I support some type of regulation, but I would ask this board to deny this specific motion. Maybe send it back and have some more discussion with the Sober Living Coalition to see what can be done to make affordable housing available to those with disabilities, rather than one more time excluding them. And also under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that would be discriminatory. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. We have with us two representatives from different council offices. I'd like to ask Marina Bartos from Councilmember Bill Rosendahl, followed, and to close with Councilmember Smith's Representative Phyllis Winger. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Marina Martos, Councilmember Rosendahl's office. I just submitted copies of a letter from the council member that I'd like to read into the record. Honorable council members, I commend you for your thorough examination of the issue of sober living homes in residential neighborhoods and look forward to working with you on this issue. I'm a strong supporter of sober living homes. They provide essential supportive services and living environment that many recovering alcoholics and addicts need. I support their mission and welcome sober living homes in my district and throughout the city of Los Angeles. However, I share the concerns of many of my constituents that an overconcentration of sober living facilities in a residential neighborhood can cause problems and change the character of a single-family community. As you continue to study this matter, I urge you to examine the implementing land use controls, such as a cap or perhaps 3 sober living facilities per neighborhood, to prevent overconcentration of sober living facilities within an area. Additionally, as city departments work on this issue, I request you direct them to work with the Los Angeles County Sober Living Coalition. The coalition has a history of operating socially responsible and neighborhood-sensitive facilities. They have worked successfully on many of the issues with which we now struggle. As policymakers, we would benefit from their experience. My hope is that the city of Los Angeles finds a sensitive and well-balanced approach that will do 2 things: protect the rights of recovering addicts to live in sober living homes, and respect the desire of our constituents to preserve the character of their neighborhoods. I'm confident that with leadership of this committee, we can achieve that goal. Regards, Councilmember Bill Rosendahl.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Ms. Phyllis Winger? Ms. Winger, are you here today? Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Phyllis Winger, representing Councilman Greg Smith, maker of the motion. The councilman was very pleased with the report that planning generated and would like to commend them for their comprehensive review and analysis. He was especially pleased to see that they did, in fact, enlarge the scope to include many different types of group living arrangements that have proven a bit difficult over the years. He is looking forward to the committee's adopting the recommendation of the Planning Department and requesting that a comprehensive ordinance be drafted that will be able to regulate the various different kinds of situations that we face daily within the city. And if at all possible, if we could have some kind of regular status reports from the Planning Department just to kind of keep us in touch with how progress is going. These do not have to be written reports. And possibly 4-month intervals or something that is not impossible to follow would be most welcome. We thank you very much for your consideration. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, that concludes the public hearing phase of this item. I did want to ask you a question, if you don't mind. In our instructions to prepare this ordinance, we've heard from different stakeholders that they wanted to participate, provide more information, give you other perspectives. Will that be allowed once we give you these instructions to include any more information? Do you have that flexibility?
Yes, we do, Councilman. I think as part of our due diligence in preparing this ordinance, we want to make an outreach to all the different groups on both sides of this issue, both to the neighborhood councils who have spoken today, as well as to groups representing sober living coalitions. We really need to get perspectives from both sides of the issue to prepare a balanced, even-handed ordinance.
Okay, great. So, well, folks that are here today, if your information will be folded in I know there's a need in this society to have a place where people can recover and regroup and put themselves in a place where they can feel productive again and healthy. I think the issue here is more of how it happens in the city. And I think that's the focus of everyone's attention. So that being said, I do have the instructions, unless you have other observations or questions, Councilmember? Okay. So we'd like to approve the Planning Department's recommendations as follows. 1, instruct the Planning Department to prepare a comprehensive citywide ordinance that regulates licensed community care facilities, licensed alcohol and drug abuse treatment facilities, and unlicensed group residential homes. The ordinance would also regulate unlicensed group residential homes operating as a business in the residential zone. 2, instruct the Planning Department to prepare the ordinance in accordance with sound zoning principles, the Community Care Facilities Act, state, federal law, and case law. So that would be the directive of this committee. And turnaround period, do you want to either guess or give us a rough estimate of when we can turn this around?
Well, our goal would be to try to get this to the Planning Commission within 6 to 8 months. That would, of course, have to make allowances for community outreach, which is going to be time-consuming, but I think necessary to prepare, a solid ordinance.
So between now and 6 to 8 months, the process will unfold. The commission will be hearing your first reports, which at that time there will also be an opportunity for public hearing as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to also instruct the Planning Department to prepare the ordinance in consultation with the Department of Building and Safety and the City Attorney's Office.
That's fine.
Subject directive of this committee. Second. Thank you, sir, for your hard work.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes item number 6, and Roberto, item number 7. And we'll just pause for a second while everyone leaves quietly. Thank you very much. Drinking 7-Up? Item number 7. Don't get about it.
That's important.
Okay. Let's move on to the next item.
Item 7, Councilman, is a report from the city attorney. It's a proposed ordinance that would regulate day laborers, home improvement stores by conditional use, and the planning department is also present.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jane Blumenfeld, City Planning Department. Really, this is the city attorney issue, but briefly, the Planning Commission approved an ordinance, it was actually July 2005, 3 years ago, to create a new category of home improvement stores and defined it in the zoning code and created some findings by which the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council would make decisions to approve these home improvement stores. There were several findings, 5 in the initial commission action. Subsequently, many more iterations were developed, and the ordinance before you today is actually quite different than what the commission adopted, and I think it's best if the city attorney address the subsequent changes that happened in the last 3 years.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Terry Kaufman, Macias, City Attorney's Office.
We are going to get the Reader's Digest version, right?
Yeah, the short version.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
You just pull the microphone closer to you, please.
Okay, what this ordinance does is it does amend 1224U14, and it provides for a series of findings that essentially relate to, is this an area where there's likely to be a day laborer population, and you go through a series of findings, and if this area is likely to serve a day labor population, then there's a conditional use process. The Planning Commission or the City Council on Appeal may require written day labor operating standards. There was a typo in the ordinance that was attached to the revised city attorney transmittal report on E1, which said the City Planning Commission or the City Council on Appeal shall require, but it should have said may require these operating standards. And what they're intended to do are to address the land use impacts related to loitering that may impede traffic or parking, provide trash receptacles, restroom facilities, water, shelter for inclement weather, if it's determined necessary, security guard. And these are mays, so that after you've had a public hearing and fleshed out all the evidence, they may be included as operating standards that will be imposed on the home improvement store.
So the bottom line, there's flexibility with that word may.
Yes.
Okay, given all the issues that could arise on a site-specific case.
That's correct.
Thank you. Anything else from the staff? Okay. So let's go right into the public comment period. We do have one representative from a council office, from Councilmember Parks, Mr. Hernandez. Would you like to speak first or last? Okay. And we do have with us a commissioner who's also involved in this process. I'd like to give him the courtesy. Victor Nato, like to speak? Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. My name is Victor Nato. I'm here in my capacity as president of the board of directors of IDEPSCA. This is the organization that runs most of the city day labor programs. The revised proposed ordinance reflects the efforts to accommodate the concerns of large home improvement stores and other stakeholders. Essentially, the revised ordinance mandates the very same conditional use process that was used effectively in Cypress Park in the past. I was actually part of that effort with Councilmember Reyes and Mike Hernandez, and I thought it was a collaborative process. There was a benefit not just to Home Depot, but to the other stakeholders. If future home improvement stores, neighbors, and other stakeholders commit to the common goal of addressing day labor-related concerns, then effective solutions are possible. We have implemented throughout the city, with the help of the advocates and different community groups, proven methods that work for neighbors, local businesses, day laborers, employers, and the Los Angeles communities in general. But effective solutions require the participation of all the stakeholders, not just a few. The proposed ordinance merely mandates a mitigation plan be in place that takes everyone's interests into account, but also requires proportional participation. The ordinance also allows for sufficient flexibility to adapt to unique local circumstances. The most important thing though, is that it requires a comprehensive plan up front to ensure that neighborhoods are not adversely affected by these new stores. Large home improvement stores have, I think, the obligation to be good corporate citizens and responsible neighbors in the communities where they do business. This ordinance does not unduly burden business. Instead, it encourages exactly the type of win-win partnerships that we all want and need in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Francisco Uribe, and then followed by Abel Valenzuela.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Francisco Uribe, Senior Manager of Government Relations for the Home Depot, 3800 West Chapman Avenue in Orange, California. Thank you, Chairman Reyes, for your leadership, and Councilman Weiss for your attention to this issue and to your commitment to develop a comprehensive and balanced approach to what we all know is a very complex issue. The Home Depot looks forward to continue to work with you and other important stakeholders to develop an ordinance that comprehensively provides guidelines to the various entities that must be involved to address this issue. Unfortunately, the current draft ordinance leaves many unanswered questions that should be addressed. The Home Depot has serious concerns with the current draft ordinance, and we ask that more time be allowed to further develop a comprehensive and effective ordinance. The Home Depot suggests the following amendments to the proposed ordinance as a start. The ordinance should only apply to new home improvement stores. The ordinance should not discourage existing stores from making improvements such as energy efficient upgrades or renovations. Nonprofit day labor center operators working with the city shall operate day labor centers. A home improvement store should not be responsible for operating a shelter. The ordinance does not define who will operate the shelters and what standards will be used to determine their success. The ordinance shall provide flexibility to ensure that a day labor center is only required where appropriate. We ask that criteria be established so that the ordinance equitably impacts all applicable parties and not be limited to 100,000 square foot developments. This criteria could include items such as proximity to major thoroughfares or pre-existing day labor presence. Funding, the ordinance should provide information regarding ongoing funding of the required shelters. Various options for financing of the operations of the day labor centers have been discussed previously. However, the current draft ordinance fails to mention any options. The property, we ask that the city include language, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on making this ordinance more comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Uribe. Thank you very much for your efforts. We have with us Abel Valenzuela.
Good afternoon.
Is it doctor yet?
It is.
Oh, it is. Okay, Dr. Valenzuela.
It's actually been that way for about 20 years, but
You see?
it's a good joke.
We should
Good
be
joke.
talking more like, more officially then.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Abel Valenzuela, and I'm a professor at UCLA in the departments of Urban Planning and Chicano Studies. For the past decade, I've devoted most of my scholarly attention to better understanding the day labor market, not only in Los Angeles, but also across the country, and I do want to underline that point. I've also looked at day labor internationally in places as diverse as Japan and South Africa. In my research, I've paid particular attention to the role of worker centers to mitigate some of the concerns and conflicts that might arise over men looking for work. It's their constitutional right, and there's been lots of issues about this, and so I've spent a lot of time looking at the primary public policy, which is the creation of worker centers. In my mind, it's the most thoughtful, the most inclusive, and the most forward-thinking approach that municipalities can undertake to curtail some of the conflicts or some of the issues that might arise. It allows for different community stakeholders to come together to resolve issues of common concern. Perhaps most importantly, worker centers provide a creative and a more orderly space to exchange labor for wages. And my research also shows that worker centers provide fewer abuses and better economic opportunities for both the workers and the employers. There's other positive impacts that worker centers provide, but it's much too lengthy for me during this short time period. Worker centers, I think, in Los Angeles represent some of the best day labor practices in our country. Indeed, I'm often called by different municipalities such as Santa Monica, Sacramento, New York, to discuss the creation and the support of worker centers, and I consistently refer to our fair city as a perfect example of really forward-thinking legislation. And I believe that this ordinance that's been put forward is another example of the creativity and the fairness in implementing this policy, and so I urge you to vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time and all your energy in this effort. Thank you so much. Okay. Angelica Hernandez. And then we have Bethany Leal. And we'll close with Pablo Alvarado. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Angelica Hernandez, and I'm the site manager of Cypress Park Community Job Center of the Institute of Popular Education of Southern California. Sorry. IDEPSCA supports the Home Depot ordinance. IDEPSCA has been working with day laborers since 1992. We have assisted the city of Los Angeles to mitigate the impact of day laborers since 1996. The first center we opened was the Hollywood Job Center. Based on our long and rich experiences, we cannot agree more with the ordinance because it helps us move forward with past agreements we have had with the Home Depot. Agreements such as to have ongoing task force meetings with the store managers, with the police, and with day laborers are a must if we want to cooperate with various stakeholders. IDAPSCA urges the committee to move forward and not wait any longer. 3 years ago, we had our hopes high that an ordinance would bring Home Depot to the table, but nothing has come about. Meanwhile, those of us who operate day labor centers are blamed for not having a working model that can be replicated. IDAPSCA understands that this ordinance does not address questions of funding, but at least it would give us a leverage to sit down to the table and mitigate the impact of the day labor's presence. Perhaps as we sit and talk, we can come out with a real cooperative model that includes ongoing funding with Home Depot and other large stores. Finally, IDAPSCA accepts the fact that Home Depot pays taxes to the city, but so do day laborers. Moreover, we should keep in mind the fact that when Home Depot takes over a site, many pop and mom stores are displaced. We encourage the members of this committee to approve this ordinance. We need to beautify the communities by asking our corporate citizens to assist us with this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. Bethany Leal, Pablo Alvarado, then we'll close with Mike Hernandez.
Hello, my name is Bethany Leal. My address is 1039 West 39th Street, Los Angeles 90037. I'm the director of the Multi-Ethnic Immigrant Workers Organizing Network, also known as MIWAN. As a policy advocacy organization, MIWAN would like to go on record as supporting the ordinance and also asking that the ordinance be passed as soon as possible. MIWAN views this ordinance as part of a broader good public policy, that of immigration integration, by having public and private entities work together to create facilities used primarily by immigrants, individual residents, as well as the whole city benefits. And what we're hearing from Home Depot as well as everyone is I'm hearing that everyone supports the ordinance. The difference is we would like for it to be passed sooner than later and not to be continually dragged on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leal. Pablo Alvarado. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Pablo Alvarado, and I am the director of the National Day Labor Organizing Network, which is based here in Los Angeles. And I am here to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance. It's been a couple of years since this council took on this issue, and I am pleased to see that there is progress on an ordinance that we can all and should support. My organization strongly believes that the proposed ordinance will make it easier to build and maintain day labor centers that will mitigate local concerns and serve as community assets. The proposed ordinance only requires that there is a plan in place before a store opens, and we believe that is a first step to ensure that we build successful day labor centers within our city. We all know that in order to build a successful center, we need to include all the different community stakeholders, and that together we must comply with our own responsibilities. The proposed ordinance will ensure that centers that are built in the future are actually a real partnership between the public, the private, and the nonprofit sectors. My organization is committed to ensure that that the concerns of businesses and day laborers and also city officials are included in this effort, and we're committed to work on this down these lines. Finally, I'd like to briefly say that it is a distinct honor to work with the day laborers who every day get up in the morning to go and perform the difficult jobs under very difficult circumstances, but in the proudest tradition of this country and our city. So I want to make sure that we recognize some of the workers that took their day off today to be here with us. Si por favor se paran los trabajadores que pudieron acompañarnos ahora, que perdieron su día de trabajo por estar aquí con nosotros, y también los organizadores. Mil gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Bienvenidos. Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Weiss, the people who are not here to testify today are the people who deal with the nuisance that's created by unregulated activity. And that was what spurred this particular motion for Councilmember Parks. It was introduced 3 years ago. And what we were trying to do is figure out how do you regulate the activity. And some of the stakeholders, for example, Home Depot, felt that the way it should be regulated is to push them off the property and allow them to do whatever they do as long as it's not on their property. And in the case of Chesterfield Square, what was across the street were residential homes. And that's where day laborers gathered. And that's where they sought their employment, and they were being employed by the customers of Home Depot. And the nuisances that were created are basically been a neighborhood problem for the last 3 years. And Councilman Reyes, when you and I were working together, the reality is we had an opportunity to set up a model that worked quite well. And just recently, for whatever reason, it's been undone. But we know that the model can work if you try to mitigate the regulation. So what the ordinance that's before you today is not what's been proposed over the last 3 years. It's basically a land use ordinance. It does not include funding. It does not include programs. It doesn't apply to existing stores. It applies only to new stores. And what it does is it creates an environment through a conditional use permit process for a specific plan to be developed as to how you might mitigate the potential nuisance in a particular neighborhood that basically are very different throughout the city of Los Angeles. I think it gives the zoning administrator some options that they can look at. We use the word may as opposed to the word shall. It allows for the council office to put together neighborhood groups to also deal with the potential development to determine how to mitigate it. And ultimately, the end result will be hopefully a plan that includes a partnership between all the parties. And I just wanted to kind of clarify what's before everybody. This is strictly a land use ordinance that calls for a conditional use permit for a process in terms of that we have identified has created, when unregulated, potential nuisances in neighborhoods that affect the quality of life of people. And the city attorney's here to answer those questions. It was the city attorney that advised us we couldn't include the programming stuff, we couldn't include specific issues in terms of how it had to be mitigated, because this is strictly a land use issue. And that's why I came back to Plum. We would like this to go forward to the council. We would like the council to adopt it so that we could be moving forward on the other issues. But those will be addressed when there's an application to open a new store, and parties will be talking about it at that time. So that's what's before you today. Councilmember Parks would just like to see it pass because it's been going around in circles and circles for the last 3 years. And I've been, I think, before this committee 4 times in regards to this particular issue. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have any questions. Any questions? Well, it has been a long process, and I do understand that we have that continuous challenge to achieve that balance we all want. I believe the approach on this particular item does give us enough flexibility within the land use parameters of our municipal law, and that provides in of itself hopefully some remedies to some of the situations. The social element is not part of this action. The social element is where we will hopefully address in the future. And this is why I invite the big box companies to work with the city to figure out solutions in that dynamic as we move forward. Should we need to do amendments in the future, the process allows for that. If there's things we need to learn and change, we can do that through amendments. So this is not the end of a process, but I believe the evolution of a solution that can be folded in should we need amendments in the future to address the impacts that this ordinance could have in the future. So that being said, do we have a second?
Councilmember Reyes, Terry Kaufman, Macias City Attorney's Office. In the motion, though, can you please include the substitute page 2 that has that one word change on it?
So we will move this with the recommended changes where we add the word may instead of shall, and any other changes that might be identified in that page. So we do have a first and a second, and that will be the action of this committee. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Okay, folks, gracias por venir y ojalá que vamos a tener un futuro más efectivo y saludable para todos. Muchas gracias. All right, Roberto, next item.
Item 8 and 9 are interrelated, Councilman. Item 8 is a proposed ordinance it's an enabling ordinance that would establish the off-campus housing district. And item 9 is the first district that is being recommended, denoted as the University Off-Campus Housing Overlay District. And the planning staff is present.
Okay. Can I have staff on this one, please?
Good afternoon, Griselda Gonzalez from the Department of City Planning. The proposed projects were initiated via council motion by the council offices for District 8 and 1 in 2005 for the purposes of establishing new regulations that would help maintain and stabilize project and enhance the character of the residential neighborhood proximate to the University Park campus. The intent was to address incompatible multi-bedroom and out-of-scale projects which have created a physical and land use impacts such as the overflow of parking and residential streets resulting from inadequate on-site parking requirements or incompatible design. Staff is therefore requesting approval of 2 ordinances that would amend the municipal code and establish an overlay district in the South Los Angeles area. The first item, CPC 2005-5847CA, is a proposed code amendment that would modify and add enabling language to the municipal code. What the ordinance would do is amend section 12.04, 12.32 to add a supplemental use district called the Off-Campus Housing District, OCH, and it would also add section 13.12, adding enabling language that would make it possible to establish an OCH overlay district in any area around a college or university through initiation or through application. The ordinance also seeks to amend section 12.24 to require that certain projects located within off-campus housing district would require a conditional use permit. Staff is also requesting approval of the second item, CPC 2005-5848-OCH. This is an ordinance that proposes to establish the University Off-Campus Housing District that would be established in the South LA area, in the area bounded by the 10 freeway to the north, the 110 freeway to the east, Martin Luther King Boulevard to the south, and Normandy Avenue to the west. Figueroa Corridor would be exempt from per previous CPC actions. Since these cases were last before you, the planning consulting with the city attorney, the categorical exemption were reevaluated, and the planning department determined that a more in-depth analysis of the categorical review required an initial study. So with that, a proposed negative declaration was published on April 18th and circulated in April 08 through May 08. During this public comment period, there was no comments received. Staff is therefore requesting that the committee recommend approval of the negative declaration for each case, CPC 2005-5848 OCH and CPC 2005-5847, and requesting also the approval of the 2 ordinances that one would amend the municipal code and the second would establish the University Off-Campus Housing District in South LA. So with that, we would take any questions.
Well, thank you. So how long have you been working on this one?
Well, it was initiated in 2005.
2005. So good 2 years. Okay.
A little bit more.
Thanks for the good work. Any comments, report from the Madam Attorney, City Attorney? No? Okay. What we'll do is dive into the public hearing comment, and we will invite David Robinson and then Christina Rasp, and then we'll have Lee Wagman, and that's for items 8 and 9. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. So my name is David Robinson, and I'm here representing Strategic Actions for a Just Economy located at 152 West 32nd Street. And I'd like to address the pair of linked items 8 and 9. SAGE appreciates Council and Planning Department's attention to the issues that the ordinances are meant to address, and we share the goals that are stated as the goals for these ordinances, We're hopeful that they will indeed prevent or at least reduce the proliferation of out-of-scale housing and housing without adequate parking in the vicinity of universities and colleges, beginning with the University of Southern California. In the remaining short time I have, I just want to suggest one amendment to hopefully preempt one amendment and then just express a larger concern. The amendment SAGE suggests is to include a mandatory evaluation after 1 year to evaluate the effectiveness of the ordinances, and that would hopefully be accompanied by planning department doing the necessary data tracking to make such evaluation meaningful. The possible change we'd like to preempt is we urge you not to exempt any other areas from the USC specific overlay district, that one overlay, other than the currently exempt areas that are fronting Figueroa. So we hope that no other areas in the region would be exempted from the overlay district. As for the larger concern, we just want to say, or I'd like to say, that we think the ordinances are unlikely to address the overconcentration of campus-serving housing in the low-density, low-income areas around USC. We don't think this is going to do much to stop displacement. We do think it will keep the construction in character with surrounding buildings, and it should help with the parking problem. But we urge you, Council and Planning, to use the community plan updates to really address the issue of displacement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Right at the 2-minute mark. Great. Christina Raspy.
Close. Christina Raspy.
Hi there.
I'm Christina Raspy. I'm the Associate Senior Vice President for Real Estate and Asset Management for the University of Southern California. And I'm here on behalf of the university to say that we support this ordinance and the overlay district that's being proposed today. We agree that there is a need for quality student housing in the North Jefferson Park area, and that we recognize that these projects need to be adequately parked for the students that bring cars to our campus. Over the last 3 years, we've engaged in a master planning process to attempt, among other things, to address the housing needs of the students and to ensure that no further single-family residents are converted to student housing projects. Councilmember Parks' office, we understand, will be initiating a specific plan to document our master planning process in the city's codes. The only concern that we have today that we wanted to express with the ordinance is that some of the areas that are covered by the off-campus student housing overlay zone that's created in the North Jefferson Park area are already concentrated with student housing. The area shown here as Area 3 is 100% occupied by students. Areas 4 and 5 are 90% occupied by students. So the finding of the CUP requiring that there is no detrimental concentration of large-scale campus-serving housing within a 1,000-foot radius of the proposed project would be very difficult to meet in these areas. And we believe these are the exact areas where new student housing needs to go. We don't want the students displacing area residents any longer, and since these areas are already student housing occupied areas, we'd like to concentrate future development in these areas. This can all be accomplished through the university's specific plan process in conjunction with Councilmember Parks' office, but we wanted to highlight the issue for you today so you can understand in the future why we think these are the areas where student housing should be concentrated. They're walkable to the university. We'd like to encourage students not to bring cars with them to the university, and so the areas where student housing already exists should be replaced by quality student housing projects.
Thank you, Ms. Raspy. And I know the portion of my district, just south of the 10, there's quite a bit of activity already in terms of how the rents are moving. I had the occasion of spending a Saturday with a whole group of folks, and I forget the name of the street, the number, but there was a whole street about 3 blocks long where the folks were telling me that they were literally being pushed out and displaced. And so the issue here for us is, how do we participate in that process where we respect everyone's rights, but also know that we need to maintain a certain level of stability for the families that are already living there. And that to me is a real tough challenge. So hopefully continue working together as you go through that specific plan.
We'd very much like to continue to work with you and the other members of this committee, as well as Councilmember Park's office, to address that very issue. We think it's important that the university and the developers it's working with take the lead to build quality student housing closer to the university so the traditional single-family neighborhoods can be returned to the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Lee Wagman, and then we'll have David Hilliard.
Hi, I'm Lee Wagman. I'm the CEO of the Martin Group, 100 Wilshire Boulevard. We are a real estate development company that are currently working on projects in the area adjacent to USC. They're mixed-use projects that will provide new student housing and retail commercial space connected with it. I want to make sure that the ordinance very specifically picks up the exception that was incorporated in the planning department recommendation. I didn't read it in the draft of the ordinance that I had, so I want to make sure that it's there and very carefully tailored to exclude the Figueroa corridor, because without that exception, the ordinance is going to be counterproductive. The whole intent of the ordinance is to prevent student housing from migrating into residential communities. Figueroa corridor and Jefferson particularly, Jefferson as it's adjacent to the university, are the perfect place where you do want housing to be. It's close to the university, it's walkable. The university has ample parking. It's got enough parking for all of the students, faculty, and staff that are there. The problem is there's just not enough housing adjacent to it to use it. So we need to make sure that the exception includes all projects, not just lots, because there are multiple lot projects that front on the Figueroa corridor. Just a year or so ago, the Figueroa corridor general plan amendment was passed in order to induce exactly this kind of development. So I want to make sure that that exception is embodied and codified, as well as to look at Jefferson that sits between the main campus and an area that is, Ms. Raspy just identified as 100% university students right now. So thank you very much, and with that clarification, we definitely support this ordinance.
So we are in agreement that it is being excluded.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, David Hilliard.
David Hilliard, 10790 Weyburn Avenue, Los Angeles. I'm here to speak on the off-campus housing district now proposed. My concern about the off-campus housing district is that as it's currently written, it's really detrimental to the goals of achieving student housing close to campus, particularly University of Southern California. The CUP requirement adds an unnecessary additional layer, an unnecessary additional burden, which is not reasonably applicable because currently developers, particularly in the University of Southern California area, are required to meet the obligations of planning, building and safety, the Community Redevelopment Agency, and all of the other processes that are required to address, to go through this, to achieve a project. So currently we believe that the extension of an additional overlay district doesn't help the process of achieving more housing close to campus. It hurts it. Secondly, the additional parking requirements in the ordinance are not very well written. It's unclear whether the additional parking applies to every single habitable room in a project or only units with 5 or more habitable rooms. The writing of this requirement is very detrimental, such that if it's applied to every habitable room, you could have a project with 100 habitable rooms or 500 habitable rooms, which require additional parking of that amount beyond the regular parking requirement. And lastly, the discretionary zoning administrator finding that there's not a detrimental concentration of incompatible campus housing is difficult to achieve.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have Laura Myers and then Maggie Vaznas.
Hi, my name is Laura Myers. I live at 1818 South Gramercy Place, which you'll note is a little farther west. I support the ordinance. I wear a lot of different hats. So quickly, I've been on the CRA, PAC, now CAC since 1989. With West Adams Heritage Association. I'm with the Neighborhood Council. It's an interesting day because the off-campus housing issue is not much different than the sober living issue or other kind of congregate housing issue. It's all a problem in our character neighborhoods where too many houses become overburdened with too many people who are not related to each other and not behaving like a family, if I'm saying that right, where it's operated as a business. I have been working with Councilmember Park's office, as have a number of people in the community, not for 3 years, but 5 or 6. We had a task force and identified specifically one of the issues as parking and would like to see, in effect, and I don't think that's what the ordinance does either, 1 parking space per car, right? In other words, far in excess of the current requirements. What we were dealing with is people building buildings or converting houses where each bedroom has between 2 and 4 students in it, each one of whom had a car. So that's a big issue. I am so happy that USC is now doing a master plan, I digress, for the University Park section of the historic West Adams District. Jefferson Park is 2 miles west. And since 1989, we've been asking for it. It's great that it's happening. I think if it becomes a specific plan, regulations and boundaries can overlay on top of this overlay. I think we should move this one forward and then deal with their specific boundaries and these 3 blocks have too many students once they have the actual master plan approved and a specific plan initiated. I think this should go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I believe this is our last card. Maggie Pazlos.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Maggie Fainer, 2631 Orchard Avenue. I started with this as a member of the Citizens Oversight Committee on the overlay zone. 2 years ago, I was here as a representative of my neighborhood council, making the points in support of this ordinance, the 2 ordinances, and now I'm back as a resident homeowner I live in the area. I live in North University Park. I have been watching my area be gutted as people come in and chop up these houses that were once affordable family housing. Now people who manage to stick it out come home and circle the block, try to figure out a place when they would just like to pull in, park in front of their house, and get their dinner and see their families. And what we're getting is pushed out. There are many ill-conceived projects happening. North University Park may be a loss according to USC, but it's being pushed into the other areas. This ordinance needs to happen. It's too little, but it's a start, and it's time now to get it passed.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, that concludes. Any questions, Councilman? Okay, then we do have some instructions for both items. Number 8, if we could move to rename the heading from the code amendment from off-campus housing districts to the neighborhood stabilization districts. 2, to instruct planning departments to report back in a year with an evaluation of the tool and overlay district and report on its effectiveness in mitigating the impacts sought to address and with any needed recommendations. And 3, to approve the city attorney and to prepare the ordinance. On 9, if we can move to rename the heading from University Off-Campus Housing Overlay District to South Los Angeles Neighborhood Stabilization Overlay District. Instead of, okay, so scratch that last one. The heading for the first overlay district should be the North University Park, Exposition Park, and West Adams Neighborhood Stabilization Overlay District. Okay, and we instruct the planning department to report back in a year with an evaluation of the tool and overlay district and report on its effectiveness in mitigating the impacts sought to address and with any needed recommendations, and approve the city attorneys to prepare the ordinance. So that's items 8 and 9, Councilman. We move that. That'll be the order. It's good to see Mr. Galavis in the audience with another hat.
Councilman Jerry Burge, City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to clarify, Planning Department prepares the ordinance for item number 9. The City Attorney will prepare the changes related to item number 8.
Exactly. Okay. So that's items 8 and 9. Anything else, Roberto?
Item 14, Councilman.
14.
Closed
We're going
session.
to get away. That's a closed session.
Yes.
All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. We have one closed session item. Let me do this right now. Anybody here for general comment?
Yeah, so I was going to suggest.
No one here for general comment? Seeing none? Then we can move into closed session.